So direct access. So how many here people love configuring VPNs or getting calls from their executives at middle of the night saying, my Cisco VPN client's going, it's the middle of the night, why did you want to connect? And you go, they realize they're in Las Vegas having fun and they just want to check on their email or something like that. How many people love deploying the Citrix Access Gateway and then realizing that the ActiveX control doesn't work half the time? Or sorry, the other vendors. So a very heated argument in many organizations that we visited is around direct access and people going, well, it's not Cisco VPN, so we don't trust it. It's not Checkpoint VPN, so we don't trust it. So how many people, I suppose, a very fair question, many people think direct access is secure. And in fairness, how many people think, apart from you, you know it's secure. Seriously, do you think it's secure or not secure? How many people would trust their lives, maybe not their lives, but their kids' lives on direct access? You trust your God. I wouldn't trust it. I know. My point being, direct access is secure. If you run a VPN technology, it's the exact same. It runs the exact same IPsec protocols that any other VPN technology run. It runs them at AES 256 or whatever the encryption algorithms are up onto the top levels. So what's different? The big difference is you don't need a bloody client. Calm down. You don't need an additional client to install an additional piece of software to actually destroy your networking stack, where you actually have to go in and make a registry edit and actually make the bloody thing work. No vendor specific there. Well, actually, very vendor specific, but anyway, we won't go into it. It's zero configuration for the client. Once they connect on, now if you want, you can include two-factor authentication, so you can bring RSA Secure ID into this, you can bring in the virtual smart card solutions if you want. You don't have to, you can make it zero configuration. I have to ask why you're laughing. Do you believe me? I want you to believe me. It does work. I'll show you on my laptop in a second some of the bits and pieces that go on. So, direct access is a clientless VPN solution. The idea is that the client should have almost zero touch unless you need to enter a two-factor authentication. And even then, if you use the virtual smart card solution with the TPM hardware chip that's on your laptop, the guys can log in with their PIN, authenticate, and actually get a secure session where they'll never have to enter their second level credentials because it will automatically happen by the operating system. So, some marketing, lovely stuff. Simultaneous CorpNet and Internet access, force tunneling if by choice. Force tunneling can actually be sometimes a problem in some enterprises because of the way people have configured group policy on proxy servers, and in terms of execution contexts, they actually tie the system account to the actual proxy server, which stops direct access from working. It takes a while to configure and a lot of network traces to identify, but it happens. So sometimes you have to do a small bit of more detailed planning than before. Remote management. So this is the one that I always find the most interesting because people love the Big Brother approach. You've all watched Big Brother, cameras looking over you. Do you really want your laptop to be at home and people to spy in on what you're doing? You do? Most people don't. But the thing is, it's an optional thing, so you can stop this from actually the corporate network from pushing out and actually connecting to your machine. But as an IT pro and as an IT administrator, if you're servicing your clients, being able to manage your estate while it's not connected to the actual corporate network, like physically connected to the corporate network, is really important because now you can actually determine the client health. You can protect sensitive data. You can push out policies when you need to. Like if you need to push out a new build of the software, I can't tell you how many companies I've come across that being able to push out a new build of the software solves them so many problems because guys just don't hit the network that often. They might be road warriors on the road for a couple of days and they might run 2 builds behind. How many people use or support Link here? For an example, Link is an absolute nightmare for this stuff. If you don't keep the builds consistent across Link, like so you patch your server, you patch your clients, you patch everything. If you don't keep that patch things, you come into all sorts of spurious errors and you'll see stuff, just because people won't manage their builds properly. With direct access, and this is how Microsoft manages our laptops, with direct access, they push patches to our boxes to make sure we're compliant. If we don't patch our clients on a regular basis or don't accept the patches that they try to push down to us, we're not allowed to connect to the corporate network. We're instantly blocked because they don't want infections to spread. It might seem a bit severe in terms of a standard enterprise within inside the Irish marketplace, but it's the practicality of mitigating security risks and security attacks and all those wonderful malware stuff, and people installing rootkits that they believe is going to put up a pretty bunny on their picture so their kids can actually have a look at it. It's going to stop all this. So why not allow to do it? And it is secure, out of the box. It uses certificates. Give me one instance in the world in the last 20 years where certificates have been broken by not some idiot giving out their private key, but actually being broken properly. Hasn't happened. So how can a VPN solution, because that's what it is, it's a VPN solution, like direct access, not be secure when it's based on certificates and not some idiot giving out their private key? I really will specify that, because if you give out your private key, just give away the keys to the house. You deserve to be robbed at that stage. But if you don't give up your private key and you maintain your proper key bit lengths and all those wonderful things in the PKI environment, it's secure. More secure than any VPN solution, because it does actually use certificates. So without further ado, because I just want to run through I'm just going to show you a couple of slides very, very quickly. So you have to go through the usual stuff in terms of your network, in terms of securing your perimeter security, securing your internal layer of security. You have to do all those pieces. You can't just rely on direct access to sort that all out for you. So let's not be pedantic about it. So we got a server role now in Server 2012. It's called Unified Remote Access, and it comes with direct access and VPN as a backup. So if people can't actually make a connection to the actual direct access server, they'll make a connection to the VPN server. So it gives you a backup straight away if you want, where they'll have to do some stuff in. Can be based on the same certificates, so you can use the same certificates for authentication via the VPN as you would direct access. So again, keeping that level of security to beyond nuts. Again, if you don't expose your private key. And I will specify that. It's all done in IPv6. So to the actual direct access components, it's all IPv6 end to end, but it's just encapsulated into IPv4 across the actual internet medium. If you are lucky to have an ISP that will give you an IPv6 address and allow you to connect all the way through and all the paths to an IPv6 address, then that's the best scenario you can possibly get, because you'll get all the wonderful optimizations within inside IPv6 in terms of security, in terms of quality of service within inside the actual IPv6 stack. If you don't, like most people, you'll either be translated into a Terador or an IP HTTPS tunnel, which is just a fancy way of encapsulating. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of these in massive detail, because I want to show you the console and a few other bits and pieces before 3 o'clock. So it's all routed to your 2012 server. So who would have believed that 2012 can actually be a router? It's got more memory and CPU capabilities in it than most kind of high-end, I'm trying not to say Cisco, but high-end networking vendors, I apologize. But it does. And it's cheaper to install 128 gig of RAM in them than it is in your bloody routers and maintain those type of router tables. And it's easier to manage because it's a GUI. You don't have to know all those weird iOS commands. And by the way, I am an ex-Cisco engineer, so that's why I can talk blatantly about it. But more importantly, you can integrate it into your NAP solution. So anyone implement network access protection? So your health registration authorities, so that you can actually determine that if your systems are up to date. So if their systems aren't up to date with your patches or whatever policies that you may deploy, because it's not just Microsoft policies, you can create a whole heap of different policies. If your antivirus is not up to date, not getting on the corporate network, you're too much of a risk. Sorry, Bob. Bob's causing trouble today. Don't have your patches up to date? Sorry, Bob, not connecting. You can do all this, so why not? Provide end-to-end encryption like IPsec tunnels directly to the actual corporate resources, so that there is absolutely zero chance in hell of people sniffing the connection. Who would believe that the US military used this in anger? Now, the US military, the most paranoid people on the planet, use this in anger. The Air Force use it in anger. The Marine Corps use it in anger. These things are being adopted across the states, and I say the states specifically because they are incredibly paranoid about security. There is even dedicated teams inside the organization I work for Microsoft, where you're only allowed, if you're not allowed into any of these public sector customers unless you're part of this particular team, and you have to go in and get your L kicking to get on board. It's a strange bits and pieces. But Long story short, and I'm just going to skip through these slides because ultimately the most important information is coming towards the end, which is this stuff here. So we have concepts of management servers and we have concepts of infrastructure servers. In direct access, there's 2 tunnels that are built. The first tunnel is to allow you to actually connect to the management servers and do some DNS resolution and to do authenticated AD for your client or your machine certificates and so on and so forth, or your machine's account, so that they know their authorized sessions to be able to allow just connect to the infrastructure. Or you can include your NPS, your network policy servers, or your patching servers in here as well, so that they don't get onto the actual rest of the authenticated infrastructure until they're healthy and authenticated with their user credentials. So 2 layers of authentication. Second layer uses computer certificates and Kerberos. Do we trust Kerberos? Yeah, we should trust Kerberos. It's better than NTLM. I'm not being, like, it's well known Kerberos is actually far superior than NTLM. I'm not being funny about that. But my point being is that at this point here, we're presenting client certificates just to connect. We have to do all the trust. We have to have all the group policy settings correctly. We have to have everything on the client machines just to be able to make a connection to this machine. Once that's all happy, then we get onto the actual infrastructure servers, if we're allowed. We then present more credentials over here to the second set of servers. We want to connect to our SharePoint server. We want to connect to our line of business SQL application, or our RDS farm, or our Citrix farm, or whatever the case may be. Now we actually have to authenticate with our actual AD credentials. Via Kerberos, because the tunnel's built, we can now authenticate to an actual Active Directory controller. So now do you believe it's secure? Yeah, you see, there we go. I'm already messing. It's secure. There's a lump of certificates in there which have never been broken. Go certificates. Kerberos authentication, not NTLM, Kerberos. And machine certificates of authentication. How many points of revocation can you actually stop someone getting into the network? So you can revoke the certificates, they won't be able to get in. You can disable the computer account, they won't be able to get in. You can disable their user account, you won't be able to get in, as long as you properly administer your network and actually follow up on the policies of when someone leaves. So it's pretty secure. Enforced BitLocker, the drives are encrypted, and as long as you disable your firewall port, you won't be able to do like a memory dump from the actual server or the actual laptop. So disable your firewall ports, because if there's a memory leak, not even on Windows, on most actual operating systems, that will allow you to do it. Anyway, so we'll show this quickly, because I have about 2.5 minutes, maybe 3. So direct access previously was an absolute pain to configure, because you had to load it UAG. Oh well, so if you started in the original build and tried to read the lab guides, yeah, good luck. On the second level of it, then you had to install UAG, and then you had to go through the process of is UAG secure? What parts of UAG do configure? Do I configure the TMG part of UAG, or what do I actually do? Well, now we have a role. So who can't install a role in Windows Server 2012? You can't? Peter, please leave the room. Be embarrassed, hang your head in shame, and do the walk, and give me that badge back. Yeah. So, point is, you've seen this earlier on. Dave did a quick demo earlier on. So, specify a group. Do you want it for remote management only, or do you want a full client access? So, can we just manage out, or can we allow people to come into the network? Really simple. That's a difficult decision. Hopefully not. What do you want? Domain control. Do you want domain computers? It's already specified for you. Or I can specify a specific group if I want. Okay? Now there's a catch that I'm going to show you, because you might, domain computers, do I really want to deploy to all my domain computers? Now lazy people will actually just leave it at domain computers, but they've actually done some really clever, and they've included a WMI filter so it doesn't actually get your desktop machines, which caused me a problem when I was doing the demo originally, which I'll show you why. That's why I know it. So enable direct access for mobile computers only. And that's the part that actually creates the actual WMI filter. So if you untick that, every single machine in your organization is going to get your policy. You don't want that to happen, so just be careful. Generally what people do is scope it to a particular group. But for laziness, I'm going to leave it there. Use forced tunneling. Forced tunneling is a debatable subject. Pretty much, if you use a proxy server internally, the only thing you have to be aware of is that the guys that configured the group policy in the correct way so that it doesn't actually influence the local system account on the machine, so that the local system account doesn't actually tunnel into a proxy server. Because if it does, well then the direct access client won't actually launch, because it will try and go to the proxy server first to be able to make that connection to the direct access servers, and it will just fail because it won't be able to get to the to the web proxy. So there's a few little bits and pieces that you need to be aware of. The network connectivity assistant, I am very pleased to say this actually works in 2012 because it sucked previously. Basically, you just specify an internal web URI for it to actually connect it, and what it does is it just basically it gives some feedback to the client to say whether or not it actually you have a direct access connection up. Previously, it was really difficult to configure. It made no sense. It wasn't in the wizard. You had to include extra registries and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff, and it sucked, and it sucked, and it sucked. How much did it suck? So, but now you can include like a help desk address and name the actual workplace. So you'll see this where it's DA connection or whatever you may be. And allow the direct access clients to use local name resolution if you've done some weird and wonderful stuff with your host file or your LM host file, or if you've local DNS servers in a particular remote site that they can query and get the same information. Why? I don't know. I don't tend to allow it to do it. So we'll just click cancel there because I've already partly configured. The remote access servers. So this is your public name. I do suggest using the names rather than the IP addresses. You're going to have to use certificates at one point in this, and they do have to be publicly trusted certificates to make your life easier. You can use internal public or internal certificates, but you're just going to make your life hard, so why have a hard life? You can if you want, but it just adds to the effort, and you haven't get to we're trying to get centralized management, lazy approach, and really good so that you can sit at home managing your entire infrastructure. So this is so for example, I'm using a self-signed cert because I can. Now I have already copied it into the actual trusted root certificates on the actual client, so it's trusted, but if you have a public cert, you shouldn't have to go through that pain and bother. Specify your adapters, WAN and LAN. I've pre-named them, so they don't just come up as WAN and LAN. You have to go into the actual network properties and name them. And I do suggest, just for ease's sake again, it takes 2 seconds. So, if you have a Windows 8 only infrastructure, which I'm sure none of you have only Windows 8, you have Windows 7 and want to support direct access. Windows 7 direct access still requires the full machine certificates and client certificates to actually do its full authentication. Windows 8 clients can do a thing called Kerberos authorization proxy. Server 2012 direct access has a feature where it will actually allow you to do Kerberos authentication via a web proxy. So, if you don't have Windows 8 or Windows 7 clients, what you'll see here is if we tick the Windows 7 clients, it'll automatically tick there, and I'll have to determine an internal root CA that it'll actually come from. Fantastic. I don't have Windows 7 clients, so I'm just going to tick this off. Or if I want to use two-factor authentication. With two-factor authentication, you have to have all your RAID servers and bits and pieces set up already and ready to authenticate. IP address assignments, do I want to just take it from the internal pools, or do I want to use it, what way I want to do it if I have it already set up? And the same with the authentication. Do I want to use Windows authentication, or do I want to use Radius? So I'll just cancel that. So with me here, so who can think they configure direct access so far? Pretty simple. I like this, man. So next thing is the network location information, or network location server. So the network location server is simply an internal website that you specify during configuration, which will determine whether you're inside or outside the network. It's a real problem if you have split name DNS or a split brain DNS, so where you're using, for example, you'll see here I'm using contosa.ie. So contosa.ie is resolvable both internally and externally. So I need to be very careful on how I plan my namespace and servers and namings and so on and so forth. So it's an extra little thing you have to be or be aware of. But you could, for example, if you have, contosa.local, you could just put in a contosa.local address, like, internal web server, an alias, and just direct it to it, and it's fine. And all it does is that when it's making an initial connection to direct access, to determine whether it actually has to build a direct access tunnel or not, it probes for this particular address. If it can't resolve it, because it's part of the exclusions list you're going to see in a second, if it can't resolve it, it will then set up a direct access connection. So here we have, as you'll see, our NLS, which these are exclusions. For example, da.contoso.ie, I want that only resolvable on the external, so I don't want to forward it to a management DNS server. Anything else on the contoso.ie space, which is going to be part of what's called the NRPT, or the Name Resolution Policy Table, which determines how direct access figures out whether it's an internal, it has to send traffic internally or externally. So if you want, you can be more specific. You don't have to just specify your entire DNS namespace. You can specify like web server 1, web server 2, web server 3, or SQL server, or whatever, if you want. And then you'll see the last one, which is part of the exclusions as well, which is the actual NLS, because if I can resolve NLS on the outside, well then I have a problem. I should not be able to resolve NLS at all, because that's how it determines whether it's inside or outside. So we click next. If you have multiple different suffixes you want to search, so for example, some of the customers that I work for have like .net, .com, .org, and so on and so forth, and they have all the DNS zones specified internally, and I want them to work as well, so you whack them in there. And then your management servers. So what servers do you want to be able to expose in the infrastructure tunnel? The infrastructure tunnel, so that these guys are they can, like, for example, DCs are going to be in your infrastructure tunnel. Patching servers, if you want to remediate clients before they connect in, are going to be in your infrastructure tunnel. These particular things. Properly exposed, properly secured through your firewall, read-only domain controllers, whatever you want. Do it properly, do it securely. Just don't open up a bunch of ports and go, yeah, I got direct access working, because it's bad. And then the last part of it is your application servers, which you want to extend authentication right down to the actual application server. So end-to-end authentication and encryption for your applications if you want, or open access to your network if you trust your users in such a way. It's up to you. Like some people use the secondary firewall going into the perimeter network to limit the IP address. So they expose in the direct access configuration the network, but then they limit via firewall rules on the second internal firewall to block the rest of the connections, so that they only access what they're actually allowed access. Up to you. It depends on the organization. Security guys generally don't like to lose control, and when they hear direct access and all these wonderful things they can do, they tend to get a little bit frightened. So we have to mother them a little bit. So once you click finish, so once you do all that, you click finish, direct access goes and generates a couple of different group policies. It goes on to the particular client, and I'll just show you where the group policies end up. So you'll see here the direct access client settings, and then the direct access server settings. And as you will see down here, I turned it off just because I'm running a VM and I wanted to actually inherit onto the VM, because I don't have a WMI filter to say it's a mobility device. But it wouldn't take the group policy because the WMI filter was on. So by default in your organization, that WMI filter is going to be there, so it's not going to actually just propagate. Even though I have domain computers for everything, it's not going to propagate to all the machines, because the WMI filter is going to read the properties on the machine to make sure it's actual mobile device. Okay? But still don't do this without consulting your AD administrators, because they will get upset. Right, so just finally, the last part, just show you quickly. The client, where we gone? Client, mini meltdown. So the client, and I realize I'm between you and coffee. So, so what you'll see here is, where are we? I'll be quicker doing it again. So get DA client. So the nice thing is you don't need to know your netsh commands. Well, you do in this case, but not like just for the purpose. Like if you have a fully working external environment, in a VM environment, it's a little bit different. But if you can just direct access command that's for PowerShell. PowerShell rocks. So one of the things I'll be talking about tomorrow is about automation and PowerShell. Yeah, love it. I'm gonna have a tattoo or something across my head tomorrow. So anyway, so the settings come down on the client. They get populated via the group policy. Fantastic. GP refresh. Now, in the case of the way I have it, just to show you, I have this external to the network. So I have it on a private switch. I have the public interface of the direct access server on a private switch. So they're talking, I just have them on the exact same IP range. So if I go netsh interface tunnel, because you'll see that the actual interface is active. So if I go ping Contoso DCO1, that's the infrastructure server. It pings over IPv6. If I go Contoso FSO1, that pings over IPv6 as well and contacts the actual server. If I do a network browse to Contoso, FSO1, and I'll just go $C just so I can show something. I can connect to the actual network share, and it's going to the direct access server, and so on and so forth. If I do, and this is the fun part, and this is why I had to show you the netsh command rather. If I do connection status, it tells me the internet connectivity is down because the VM has no gateway and there's no possible way of contacting the internet. So the direct access commands don't always work in a very structured lab environment. So the last thing, which will take 10 seconds to show you, is just in terms of the dashboard and the reporting. So you'll see here you have a total of 1 active client connect, just in case you thought I was cheating. Because I've seen some of your brains going, he's cheating. He hasn't shown us anything. I'm only messing. So you'll see here, there's the client, the username, the client I'm coming in, so the protocol and the tunnel I'm actually connected to. You didn't get half of that information with UAG, and trust me, I've done enough UAG installs to make me blind, but it's there anyway. So I think that's it.
Can this still be used for adding computers, so not on the domain, but in a different country?
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Well, no. So what you do is you need the background VPN. So you use the combination of the VPN, and once the VPN, you can connect in via the VPN client, connect in, join it to the domain, and then it will get its group policies then to allow you to connect in and then get the direct access configuration, and then away you go.
It's an offline domain join.
In Server 2012.
Is it still only an enterprise, even Windows 8?
Enterprise clients, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, as far as I remember, it's just enterprise. I know yeah, it was Ultimate, or in Windows 7 it was Ultimate or Enterprise, and then it's an Enterprise. No, not an 8, it's just Pro.